It's a pleasure that we welcome Allpere here. We met before in this PDD program. We were presenting there for one day. I found Mark's work quite interesting. How did you describe it? Like physical UX, was it?
Hardware UI, I think.
Hardware UX, yes. And so I decided to invite her and to give this talk in our research seminar. And I hope that the present and the one not present will enjoy the talk. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So my name is Allpere, as you heard, and I was kind of curious about the energy level since you've had a full day, haven't you, already? So I have a very good and high energy level. Maybe this one is something we need to, because I don't need the light on the whiteboard. It's not important. Thank you. Switches. We'll get to switches. I've had a great day today, since I had the chance to walk in my father's footsteps. He lived here in Tallinn his first 20 years of his life, and he used to take us around the little places and show in which streets he were. So I walked around there today. So I'm in good mode, and now I'd like to tell a little bit about myself. I'm an interaction designer, but I have an industrial design background from the beginning. And then I studied at the Umeå Institute of Design in Sweden and finalized there in 1999, where I took my master degree. We were the first class, so it's kind of fresh people. And then I have worked with phones at Nokia, mobile phones, for 4 years, followed by some medical equipment and other professional tools such as thermal cameras and such. And after that I went into 7 years where I was the head of a UX design group who designed user interfaces for equipment. So we didn't do the web pages or anything like that, we did the equipment white goods stuff. And now less than 2 months ago I started to work at Telia Sonera in Stockholm, and that's EMT for you here in Estonia. But I won't talk about that so much. I'll talk mainly about my Electrolux experiences today. But I wanted to hear a little bit about who's in the room. I can't hear about the guys who's not in the room, but a couple of words about your special interest and who you are. Good, maybe.
I'm Annalisa. I'm a doctoral student second year, and I'm interested in interaction design for cultural heritage settings.
I'm a fourth year doctoral student at the same program as Annalisa, and my research is about ubiquitous computing and kind of coming up with theory to support interaction design for ubiquitous computing.
So Sonia Susan, and I'm a researcher here, and my interest is on human-computer interaction, basically human-centered computing, and specialize in trust.
In
Trust.
trust, well, yeah.
I'm Łukasz. I used to be for like more than 12 years an industrial researcher, more or less coming from the engineering background, and now I'm actually preaching quantification to anyone who will listen.
Quantification.
Yes.
I'm Aga. I'm a lecturer at the Academy of Fine Arts in Warsaw in Poland, and a visiting professor here in Italy. And I also work professionally as an interaction designer and service designer.
So, I was supposed to ask you, but I can ask you now, how many of you have ever rebuilt your kitchen at home and bought the appliances and kind of thought about what you wanted to do then? You? It's yeah, and it's great fun, but you get a bit kind of tired, right? When you're out there and kind of what's good and what's bad and what you do. So most of us buy IKEA anyways. And half of that we designed. But it's not bad stuff, it's really good stuff. Anyways, so today I'll go through 2 cases. I was thinking about splitting it kind of in half, talk 15 minutes and then some discussions, and then talk again 15 minutes and then some discussions. The first is about a hardware UI product development project, large one, at Electrolux, and the other one is about how we approached Internet of Things. Not really a project, more of a concept and a strategy, kind of train of thought that I wanted to share with you. So at the end of each talk, I wanted to summarize some general tips that I'd like to share and discuss with you. And I don't know your level of kind of note-taking and how much you join in. So I'm going to ask you to write some notes on post-it notes. It kind of sometimes it helps me at least to be more alive. Yes.
I'll get
Give
some.
me my pens.
Just two, one. Do you have one pen? Do you have pens?
Yeah.
I can
We have
book it too.
no, sorry.
No? I'll get some.
I have my bag at home.
There's more.
We are digital. Digital.
I mean, kind of what things comes up in your mind. Of course, if there's anything special, just shout it out and kind of, what's that? So that's okay today. Should we wait for him? So basically, that was today. Some things about the Electrolux brand, and then some.
We had someone talk about Internet of Things a few weeks ago
Excellent.
about the project, yes. And I
Yes.
was trying to correlate Internet of Things and trust, and end up with saying that it's not trust, it's about security, because people saw this issue about security.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about it as privacy rather than security or trust. That's how I think about it. But
But for me, trust is much more than just privacy and security. It's
Yes.
perceptions as well.
absolutely, the perception of it. You're right. That is very interesting. It's a huge area. We could talk for hours about that only. As I said, I worked in Electrolux for 7 years, and that's a large corporation. I worked with the European organization there. And during my time, I grew the team. We were 2 when I started, and we were 12 when I left. So kind of growing it, and I made it more specialized. We were interaction designers when I started. And when I left, there was usability, ergonomics, visual design, and interaction design, UX strategy. We worked in a very complex environment. This is often the case when you come into this corporate UX world, but I think it's something we need to kind of think about when we're in the more academic forum. We had stakeholders all over Europe. There were, I counted, 11 marketing and R&D sites. So marketing, R&D, design did not sit at the same table, in the same place. So we had to work with that. On top of that, we had the replacement of management about 5 times in my 7 years. So that's kind of a fast pace, and that's both design management and then also the kind of corporate management. So it's kind of changing. And that means for you as a UX designer that you get into good working mode with somebody, and then that person has to leave, and you have to start all over from the beginning again to somebody new who never worked with UX. And I think this is core for our occupation. It's a given. We have to some extent kind of enjoy that part of constantly talking about what UX is and what it can be, what you can do. And if you don't like it, you're not very discouraged to do that. I see the same things now in Telia Sonera, that this is happening as well. But through our UX work and the good examples we made, we managed to kind of get down into the UX iceberg. Put that note up here, because I think it's a nice analogy how we worked. When I came, we worked mainly with visual appearance and some interaction design, but not all of it actually. We only designed some of the user experiences. Then we kind of moved us down into technology choice, which I'll talk a little bit about, content and feature choice, that we actually had kind of an impact, into brand strategy, and then slightly into the business strategy, which is actually where I think UX can be too. Today, I'll give you the story about how we made the Electrolux Inspiration range we moved the Electrolux brand. That was the main point with this. We moved the Electrolux brand with user experience. So Electrolux, I don't really know how much people know about that. I know exactly the perception it has in Poland because I've seen a lot of consumer tests in Poland. But
It's well received, I think.
what?
It actually is pretty well received.
Yes, it is in Poland. That's why they test in Poland. So they get this encouraged. Anyways, it's a bland. It has a very bland reputation to most countries. It's kind of, it doesn't mean anything. And the company wanted to do something about it. The heritage of Electrolux is that it had, 70 small brands that they kind of merged and took away and stayed on only with Electrolux, AEG and the low-tier Zanussi. Now, Zanussi is called different things in different countries, like Rosenlev in Finland and so on. I don't know here actually, I never checked. But the idea was to kind of take all of the high-level brands and make them into Electrolux. And the idea was also to make it Scandinavian premium, because all of the other players are Germanic premium, like AEG, which is also AEG, Bosch, Siemens, Miele. They're all Germanic premium, so they kind of live there in the Germanic premium area. And the company wanted this to be Scandinavian premium. But there wasn't a lot of money to put into product development. They kind of wanted us to juggle with nothing. However, we took on the task, and I think in order to understand how to become premium, we needed to understand what experiences would be easy to use and even feel premium. So we knew we had to work totally from the user's needs, both the overt needs and the hidden needs. And we wanted to do this before there was too much direction from the company, from management. Actually, we had an idea that we wanted to influence the direction of the company and direction of where the brand would go. So we wanted to influence what it would mean to be a Scandinavian premium experience. We wanted to meet the users. And of course, when you're in non-corporate environment, that feels like it's something easy to do. But it's actually not that easy in a corporate environment. Because if you decide to do it yourself and just go out and meet just about anybody, nobody will believe you that what you've seen actually applies for the target users. They think that you've seen one person. So what you need to do is to get hold of the real target users. The company has decided these are the people who are going to be our brand users. So you have to get hold of those. And that's not so easy. So what we didn't have any money ourselves. We shadowed a marketing study that actually were out and interviewing people in their homes. We went along, took our own notes, asked for the raw data from the agency, and looked at the uncut videos that they took from all of the interviews. Then we also found our own users, but when we did that, we made sure that we used this kind of questionnaires that each company has to figure out if they are the target users or not. So we made sure that. Because you have to believe me, in every time we talked about users, they asked us, did you check the right users? And that was hundreds of times during my time at Electrolux, so I learned my lesson well. Then we did our own data processing of this raw material. We didn't settle with what this marketing agency gave us, of course, because we wanted to find out the normal UX things as triggers, pain points, patterns of use. And you don't get that from a marketing study. You have to do it yourself. Then to get some buy-in about all this process, because if you just do this without getting buy-in, it's just something you do and you do nice designs after that. We wanted buy-in, so we found some open-minded people in brand and marketing not the top management, but the level below, who are a little bit more open-minded and not so afraid of losing their jobs. We asked them to join us in our data processing workshops. So they were actually with us, putting up the little notes on the walls to figure out the patterns. And together with them, we understood the needs of the users, and we started to set the target experience. And the good thing about this, that we took these guys in, is that we managed to influence what the brand then decided to do. Also when it came to marketing, so that the marketing would speak the same language as the real products. That was the whole idea. Then we spent a lot of time to draw little lines between target experience keywords. So these guys here. And this is not something yeah. From target experience keywords to common design principles. So things like flatter navigation, fewer steps, hide and reveal, and so I'm not going to go into them actually what they were. And from that to common signature elements, what would it actually look like? So we spend a lot of time to do this, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Then we, as a design team, we decided we wanted to take an active part of the marketing department's consumer clinics. And I don't know if everybody is familiar with consumer clinics. It's basically where they they gather like 10 consumers, sit a whole evening, 3-4 hours, talk about different aspects of the brand, show them little things, show them probes. This is what it could look like. Talk about the brand with keywords, etc. This is to understand how the consumers, what makes them tick when it comes to marketing, what makes them be interested, what kind of features they would like to have. So they say, I would pay for this feature but not that. So it's very much a marketing thing. But what we did is that we ourselves made up questions we wanted answers from into these clinics instead of just letting them do their thing. And we created the probes. For example, we made user stories that we showed then to the consumers. We made prototypes of little snippets of how it would work if small videos of how the user interfaces could work. And all of this was shown, and we were sitting behind the glass and listening, of course. And we got to now kind of an understanding if our design ideas had evoked the right feelings, the desired feelings that the users had. We wanted the users to have. This helped us to kill some darlings, and also to sell some of our ideas to the management. For example, before this launch, Electrolux had the LED color red. It was all red all over. But this helped us to convince the management that the white LED color we wanted to use across the range, that people actually thought it was really premium and fresh and Scandinavian, and that they would pay extra for it. So we got that understanding from these studies. But as soon as you get into this game of consumer clinics, you need to constantly, over and over again, stress out to everybody that this is not usability test. It doesn't tell anything about usability. Not really anything about perceived usability either. It tests other things than the usability. And it can never replace usability tests. Two totally different things. But you may use the same material to look at. So I don't think I can always stress this with anybody. So we did that, and then we went on to the design of all of the products. So that was the high level ideas, and now we went on to the design. Oh, I forgot some of my notes. We talked about owning user data, and that was it. Now we went on to the design, and in a large appliance company, the main business is to sell as many products as possible at the same time. So when people change the kitchen, they should buy everything from one manufacturer. It's kind of that's the business model. In order to do that, you have to make sure that all the appliances look and feel the same. And that's something that's done a lot through industrial design, materials and shapes and things. But it's also nowadays done a lot through the user interfaces, how they look and how they work, if they look and work the same. So the large appliances companies, they tend to launch all the products, dishwashers, ovens, washing machines and hobs, at all the price points at the same time. So we kind of made a big launch of 100 products, or 150, I don't know, which mean that you have to create a range. This is a simplified, very simplified image of the Electrolux 2012 range of products. There's the product groups, so hobs, ovens, dishwashers, fridges and washing machines as columns. And then it's the price points with the most expensive color screens on the top. And then some screens with text, some screens with LED, some displays, and then without displays. So it's kind of price points as well. So the user interfaces are mapped on the price points. It's a huge job to make sure that all of these products can look and feel the same somehow, as much as possible, with as little cost as possible. Remember, we had that too. So you have to reuse a lot of old technology in the background and some in the foreground as well. So for me as manager, the portfolio planning here, kind of juggling and talking to people, took a lot of my time. I'll talk a little bit about it tomorrow, what tools I used. But what we did mainly was to identify user interfaces and technologies, kind of backbones of it, that we could remove. So take out old stuff, that we had fewer products to sell, save a lot of money for the company, and have some money that we could make something newer from. So that was kind of the juggling game that we had to work with. Then, when the range is laid out and planned, as I said, we have to design to make sure that all details and looks and behaves the same. We had these ideas from a few slides ago, how we wanted them to look. And now it's time to actually check those ideas against reality. What we did was to check everything against what was possible against our main user interfaces. So mainly the ones up here, the most expensive ones. And then to check if our ideas were possible. And if the ideas weren't possible in the main user interfaces, we tweaked the idea so that it would be similar. Because similar was more important than having it out. So, for example, I'll give you an example here. We wanted the UIs to light up gradually, like the Apple pulsating battery on all our UIs. We wanted that. That's something we found. But in this oven, the most expensive one, and the most important one, we found out that this was not possible at all. No matter how much we kind of talked to people about it in different ways. And so, because we had to inherit the main board. So there's the UI board, and then behind it's the main board. We had to inherit that. So we couldn't change that in time for launch. We could just ask for it for future launches, relaunches. So instead, we decided that across all products, we would not debug. We would kind of switch it on totally. And then see if there's an update, maybe we can then start to dim. So this means that sometimes it's the technology that sets the design. I forgot to put these ones up as well. My alignment and few a bit better. Sometimes it's the technology that sets the design. But here, in this product, we were in time to make sure that the UIs could light up. The lights could kind of light up beautifully. So for the launch, we decided that the UI wouldn't, because that's not part of the kind of general alignment. But when you open the door, it lights up gradually. And so when you go down to the kitchen and you open the door at night and you want to have a snack, kind of nice feeling. So that felt quite like the brand we wanted to have. And then we made sure that for future updates, the UI could also light up gradually. The other way around is this UI. It's not, well, what I wanted to say first about this is that's two things to learn from this one. Sometimes you have to be early with changes. You have to ask for them early enough. And you have to understand the underlying systems when it's actually just you can't do it. But you can also make sure that you can do changes that actually does something for the future. But here, we were in time, we were early, and we could decide everything about this hardware UI. This is a color screen, very expensive, it's just going to sell a few products. We also realized that it wouldn't be enough just to ask that the UI would work like we wanted it here. We needed to show. Because here, we wanted to have a very beautiful kind of video-like background. These images we had in the background. We wanted them to move and dim and kind of move very slowly when the oven was cooking and have this kind of very soft and beautiful feeling. We had a hunch that this would be expensive and very difficult for the engineers to do at the end, already from the beginning of the project. So what we did at the very first meeting when we met technology and marketing is that we showed a little movie, exactly how we wanted it to feel. We had no idea about the interaction design yet because we didn't know the use cases or anything. We just knew that we wanted this feeling. So we didn't show the interaction design, and they wouldn't remember that. But they all remember this beautiful animation we had in the background. So everybody signed up on that. Let's go for this one. And then a year down the line, when the money started to get tight and now it's difficult to do, we could show that video again. Didn't you want to have this? Oh yeah, that's right. So then we could actually get it in, even if it was more costly. I have already in Telia Sonera found that this reasoning is kind of good. Show what you want it to be before technology is frozen. And then you can change. But in lots of cases we kind of know what we want it to be. So the design influenced the technology. Then at the end, of course, all through we needed to test. Hardware UIs, they need to be tested even more times than if you have a known operating system to rely on. You can't expect that the users understand your menu system because they've never seen it before. You can't expect that they can learn it because they use it so rarely. So you have to test over and over again. I talk a bit about that tomorrow as well. You have to test early, mid, with the final details as much as you can. But I think the main difference between testing on a computer or an app to here is that you don't have the hardware ready when you have to freeze the software. The hardware isn't there. You can't test on the real user interface. So you have to test on kind of a computer simulation. And then you have to be a little bit inventive on kind of putting it up. And this is a bad image because in this case we actually had the hardware kind of ready to test on. We had a board, we had the screen, and we could press on. But normally we only had a flash simulation or an HTML simulation, so that we put it up on a large touchscreen, and then if it was a hob, we put it lying down. If it was a dishwasher, it was there, and with some kind of panel around cut out, so that the users could imagine what they would do, and so that they can at least get the right angle when pressing and things like that. So you have to be inventive, and you have to kind of learn to interpret what they're doing, that it's not kind of a fault based on the usability tests. I have to tell, once I got a question from somebody else in the company, and they've gotten our simulations and they wanted to usability test, and they said, okay, is it good enough, is it okay if I kind of test with my ordinary computer and a mouse? So testing a dishwasher, how you press buttons on a dishwasher with a mouse, it doesn't work. You won't learn anything, needless to say. So you have to get as close to reality as you can. So to summarize, have user observations with the right users, consumer clinics. Well, the UX Allpere, I didn't put that here. Consumer clinics can be UX too. Plan a portfolio, but do less but do it better. Ensure alignment across everywhere. Understand the given technology and design for that. Influence the choice of technology through early design examples and usability test, close to reality. So that was my first part, and I see that you have written some stuff. Wouldn't it be nice to, I don't know, spend few minutes? Anybody wants to,
I can start.
or questions, or thoughts, or whatever, anything.
So actually, I think that in a way I have 3 questions that refer to the same issue.
Excellent.
Which basically means that in the end, for user experience to be implemented, you need to have buy-in from the upper management.
Sure, absolutely.
So you said that you've been testing with or you were doing the workshops with the middle management, as they seem to be more open-minded, which I tend to agree with from my own experience. You said that you used this example as Apple, so like this with the lighting up and like dimming the light. So one thing is like about the upper management, like how do you convince them, because it's not enough to convince the middle management only, and how what is the role of benchmarking or those reference points like Apple in convincing them? And then, the third one will come later.
That's an excellent question, because upper management usually says, we want to be best in the world. It needs to be the best user experience ever. It needs to be the best.
But we don't have money. We don't want to pay for it.
But you need to do it with the same technology as before. So, and it's not really possible to get through to them. So you need to not do that. When it comes to benchmarks, I go back. Of course, nobody in the world, I'm a bit blunt here, but nobody in the world wants to have a color screen oven at home. It's not needed, it's not necessary. That's a showpiece for the pairs to show that this company can also do like an iPhone. And of course, all user experience designers who works in appliance companies have had the question, I want this to be the iPhone of our industry, from upper management. And then what you need to do is to kind of see if you can tweak that and show them that maybe our industry wouldn't be helped by exactly the iPhone. We need to think in a different way to be the iPhone of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of work as well.
But then, so basically what I'm hearing is that in the end this is something what is necessary, which is the design vision, which the upper management often doesn't have. Because they think in the business terms or technology terms rather than the design terms.
No, I don't think so. I think they usually want something that feels good, but they don't know what it means for what they have to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to be kind of told what to put in place. Actually, in this project, we did show the results of all the usability tests to upper management. We were asked, and they actually did some usability tests as well on the products. because they were curious. But then they were replaced, so we have some other guys in management.
But do I understand correctly that actually your upper management, when they said we want an Apple of appliances, they were actually able to tell what they mean by?
No, they meant they wanted a screen that's bright and no, not at all. They wanted to have just like an iPhone.
So they meant like a touch interface and a
something that feels as nice and that. But then what you can take is that they are interested in user experience. That's amazing. They are interested in something that feels good, and then you can start to talk to them about it. What would be? Look here. What Apple did was this. They changed the experience of mobile phones. Before it was like this, and then it became like this. We can do the same journey with our products. Before it was like this, and we can make it easier like this. We shouldn't mimic exactly what they did. So I would say that when I started this journey, the idea that this product would be the showpiece, but when I ended the journey, it was more that people started to think, but maybe we don't need a color screen. Maybe we should have something that's simpler but easy to use, that's kind of direct, and you don't have to kind of do a lot of key presses, and you shouldn't have so much information on this one. Maybe you should have all your information on the phone instead of on the product. So the whole company went onto that journey that maybe having a color screen, maybe doing exactly like an iPhone on an oven is not the best way forward. A better way forward would be to have an iPhone on an iPhone and then kind of link it to, which kind of goes to the next case as well. That maybe that's more interesting.
Are you saying that you need to kind of change the values that they have?
Yeah. And you can do that with examples, I think. Mm-hmm. But I think my best way to do it is I haven't thought about this, but I do think my best way to do it is to use those consumer clinics, because people aren't stupid out there. So if you put something somebody in upper management asked for example, maybe a color screen on an oven, some users will like it, but most users will say exactly what it is. I won't use it. I want to have an oven where I turn on the oven and then I turn on the heat, and that's it. That's what I want to have. So you can use those kinds of consumer clinics.
And that was my second thought when you say yes. But I was thinking, how do you know what are the right values? Because by you asking,
You don't know.
by being an expert and saying, how do you argue that your values are the correct ones and the other ones aren't? So
But I don't
by
think.
showing examples, like you said.
I don't think it's that difficult actually, because we were out in people's homes, and then you see how they live their lives, and there are differences. I talked a lot about that you have to have the right target users because people won't believe you, but there are differences to the guys who actually like the Miele products compared to those who like the Electrolux products. The guys who like the Miele products, they know exactly what temperature to put on an oven because they learned it from their mom, and they're very precise, and they know what they're doing. Whereas the Electrolux guys just wants to do it and get over with it. There's two different kinds of people who both have money to spend and who both likes to spend money, but they have different ways of working in the kitchen.
Different principles.
Yes,
I
and
had some notes here. So in your workshop,
Yeah.
you said that you started by asking for keywords and then for
Oui.
principles. This is my note.
Good, excellent.
And then interactions. That's how you.
Yeah, that's how I said it. Bad. It was bottom up. It was from what the user said, and then we clustered, and we saw patterns. It could be like this. I want something that's. Let's look at the principles.
So you started by observing interactions.
Absolutely. In not our products, but how people move around in their lives. How they think about cooking, how especially when it comes to kitchen, it's all about when you entertain, when you invite people over, then you kind of show your right face towards the kitchen, and then you get a bit stressed. So that we observed quite a lot when people were entertaining and cooking for others. We saw the patterns out of the data, and then kind of it moved up to something, and then of course it took a while to get the nice kind of fluffy words, but for us we could really see how people wanted to have some inspiration on the weekday. I mean, what should I cook? It didn't mean that the products needed to inspire them. We also saw that people wanted simple products, but they wanted it simple for me here and now, which means it could be flexible simplicity or dynamic simplicity. So that, I mean, you can draw these lines. That's important. Good that you checked.
I didn't check it.
No, but good that you asked me.
Wondering.
Yeah.
And another thing that I didn't quite understood, you mentioned that you couldn't go directly to the people and ask for their needs or ask directly about it because they feel that their ideas would not be implemented later on.
No.
And you had to shadow. Did I understand correctly?
No, what I meant was that if you go out as a designer in a big corporation with just any user, you go to your friend's home or you call somebody, you won't be credible. People in the organization will say, but you would just ask the friend how they do it. I don't believe you. They wanted to...
Or to make credit.
They wanted to make sure that the guys you asked are just the users that we want to buy, want to like our products. So, and even though most users have a lot of common needs, so we would get a lot of data out of any user. It's smarter to look at the target user.
So this Kaizen thing was more for not for the users, but for the
Yeah.
convention.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was curious about how you're describing the work. So it's kind of, it felt to me that the user interface part is kind of a bit separate from the industrial design of the appliance. So how do you see that? Is it separate or should be integrated?
Should be integrated.
And how is the design process then? Are you designing the whole thing, or are you kind of, how do you design that user interface so that it's kind of actually part of the thing? It's not kind of glued on top of it.
I can talk for hours about this. It's very difficult. What we did here was that, well, when you have a huge team, there were about, I don't know, 40 people, 40 designers working on this, total, 40, 50 in the end.
And background is?
Mostly industrial designers, some surface engineers, some engineers, design engineers, user experience, about 6, 7 people working on this whole product group for a long time. All of these people can't kind of sit next to each other. You need to break it down into groups. So the way we did it in this project is good and bad. We had one guy from the user experience team who was very early doing the first sketchings together with the industrial designers. So there were 3 industrial designers, 2, 3 industrial designers, 1 graphic designer and him. And they were sitting very small in a room and doing the sketching. How should it look like? And then...
All appliance.
All appliances.
Everything all together.
Yes.
All of the components.
Yes. No, just the sketching, how it would kind of look. So they would kind of draw the big lines. And then this guy from my team, he would go back to us and say, what do you think about this? So we would kind of be his back office of how it actually would work. But then, when you had done the first stages on kind of, this is how the lines should look like, this is how the proportions should be, when those are set, then this core team formed other teams. So we had a dishwasher team, we had a washing machine team, we had an oven team, and then we had a UX designer sitting with each of them. And then we would go back as a UX team and talk to each other, and then go out in our team. So it's kind of, you have to be very flexible.
It's interesting how the industrial design, how do you make it extend into the user interface? I mean, the materials used, the shapes used, how you open the doors of something.
Absolutely.
And how does that translate on how I'm going to press buttons and what icons I'm going to use
Absolutely.
for the buttons, for example?
So you need to kind of draw on the same. You need to draw on the same sheet almost. You need to be very close to each other and friends with each other. Then it works. If you don't talk to each other, it just kind of collapses. And it's easy.
For us to talk with others, we need to talk the same language. And sometimes languages don't fit. So we have to have multidisciplinary. How do we do that?
That's the core of the occupation, I think, to talk to others. I think that's what we do. We know how to talk. I mean, it's kind of practical. To be honest, I think that at least half or more of the UX team here had industrial design background, which is practical when you work with industrial designers. Because then you know we can draw, you can do the same things, you kind of understand how they think. Because here, for example, this is a UX thing. It's a little bump on the touch button here to make sure that you can feel it and you know where it is. It's a button. Is that the user experience or is it in industrial design? Nobody cares really, but you create it together. You sit 2 people together, 2, 3 people together. So it's a huge task.
I was wondering also, you mentioned this kind of brand redesign process, and in the beginning you mentioned that the team was very small, it was just 2 people, right?
I don't know, yes. When I started at Electrolux,
Yeah.
this was 4 years on the road. So then when we started with this, I think we were about 8. Maybe?
8 people.
Yeah.
So the brand was redesigned by 8 people. This process which introduced it was a bigger team already.
Small, yes. I would say, yeah, 6, 7, 8, depending. We had consultants sitting in house and they were coming in and out and in and out. So we were. But I mean, for the user experience part of the brand, then there was the industrial design part of the brand, and then there was the whole communication part of the brand with other people. So it's a huge, it was a huge project.
And then finally, one last question. You mentioned that kind of the Electrolux group has different sub-brands like Zanussi and others, and then you said that kind of these devices are meant to fit together.
Not the different brands.
But not the different brands, right? So you have different teams for different groups, or
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
there's
kind
a
of, yes.
Zanussi team, Electrolux team.
Yes.
Okay, so they
Like,
don't.
every company, appliance company, organizes differently sometimes. Sometimes they can split. Or Siemens split totally, you know?
Did you learn from each other or did you?
Or between the different groups, absolutely. Because we reuse a lot. We reuse 80% of it. So I would say everything below here is a lot of, I'd say 80% of the user interfaces are reused and kind of tweaked into different things. That's yet another talk. So so you have to, that's why the user experience group was one group that it wasn't split into brands. We had one guy who was kind of the Electrolux champion in the group, and we had one guy who was the AG champion, one guy, me, who was the Zanussi champion, who could come there and somebody could ask, okay, what would it be for Zanussi here? It would be this and this. You could answer quickly. But then the other guys would design different things, so we kind of...
You would still kind of sit together and be part of the same team, just focusing on different brands.
Yeah. That's how Electrolux was made at that time. You reorganize every 5 years.
Okay, what?
Reorganize every 5 years, also the design organization.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing. I look quite a lot around how the different big companies are organized. And it's interesting because it's all about how people work together and how they do things together. So it's interesting. Any other questions on this, or should I continue with the...
I actually have, there's actually a question. So on the last slide, you asked how does it look for the digital industry, right? Especially with regard to testing. And what I see actually is getting closer if you look how applications for portable devices are developed. Many of them are really tested in the wild. So a little bit like what you are talking about. But another observation that I had that, and this is the question I wanted to ask, did you also were able to learn some lessons from the consumer electronics industry? Because this industry is dead by now, but many of the problems I see, and I worked for many years for Philips, and very similar questions actually.
For 2 years at the Electrolux, 2012-2013, we had a full management team from Philips, actually.
Oh.
So they screwed it up in the Netherlands and then they moved to...
And then they got sacked again. Sorry about that. But then also Philips now is run by Sean Carney, who used to have who used to be the head of Electrolux before. So it all moves around. It all kind of. He used to be the head of Europe just before I started. So. Absolutely, there's a lot. But that industry is dead. The TV industry is dead. But here, let's see what we can talk about Internet of Things a little bit today. Take this one here. If I can do a bit of a matrix today. See what I can remember. Now. Here I don't have a tangible project, so it's more different other projects. Let's kind of at least get a common thought about what it is in this room. And this is what I found, and I kind of like it. Everyday objects that have network connectivity, allowing them to send and receive data. It's really kind of bland. But I think one of the main point here is that it's things. And I think the whole design and the whole thought about it is as wide as things. It's not a very narrow area. So in a way, it's kind of weird to talk about Internet of Things as one thing. But let's try at least. To we in Electrolux kind of realized that the future is not having all these color screens. The future is to have a simple screen on the product and then maybe some more complex screens somewhere else. Or we wanted to understand how the connectivity would be. This is something we need to deal with. We started to look around and we found some good tangible work in these areas. The smart grids, which is maybe not good tangible areas, but still there's a lot happening there. Connected home, some things. Health and fitness, cars, and professional tools. These are some areas where we found. We started to look into some of examples here with the 4 lenses that we found was useful. The first one is usefulness. We wanted to look at the different examples about usefulness. Have others design with real user needs in mind. And then the second one is about experience. Did they consider, did they think about the user experience? And by that I mean where to put what information and how does it feel to reach the information. And then what I call privacy. Did these different examples, other companies considered on what condition the user wants to give up her privacy? Because that's what happens. And the last one is technology. Did they think about what influence the technology has? The cost, the other kinds of parts of technology and what that means. So I'll touch on some examples here, and at the end I'll be more specific on kind of design principles we found when we looked at all of these examples, and then we can discuss a little bit. So, of course, the first example is here are the 4 lenses. Privacy, technology. Of course, there's Nike as an example, and I wanted to start with them because they excel in the most important thing, the usefulness. I think they really know what they're doing there. They know training, and they come from training. They don't come from technology. And they've used this in this evolution of the fuel band, of this whole family of products. And also even thinking about being up to date about the usefulness, like the fuel band is measuring, or like most kind of training bands, is measuring not only when you have your gear on, but also all the time, which is the modern way of looking at training. So they really know what they're doing when it comes to usefulness, I think. So the experience then, I for one think that the fuel band interaction up there is very beautiful. But what they've done too is that they have distributed the experience cleverly. It's very simple on the fuel band. It's more complex but direct. You can do things directly on the nav. But then when you get into your computer, you can do all your things, and you can kind of juggle and you can get deeper into it. So they kind of really thought about where to put different things. And I think that's a very beautiful example you can learn from. And then about the privacy, or whatever you call it. Have they considered that to make it kind of worth it to give up your privacy? And yeah, I think so. Because it kind of, when it comes to training, you have a competitive part of you, which they tap into, where people want to pick up things, but also that they can be better than, they can be good people by sharing ideas and tips and tricks to friends. So I really think so. I don't know much about the technology here. They've sold their division that they don't take care of it in-house anymore, etc. So I don't know about that. I think it's beautiful, the LEDs, but nothing more. So I'm going to kind of make a question mark here. Indeed. And then the next example is, of course, Nest. Not so new anymore here. And I wanted to touch on them because I'm going to talk about appliances in a while, and that sucks, and I'll tell you why. But here they have managed to do things that nobody in the appliance industry can really been able to do. And what they've done is that they've looked at the usefulness. It's very singular. You can do one thing and it does it well. You can save on your energy, and it does that, not much more. But there's lots of different companies helping you to do that out there in the world. What they do differently is that they have a very beautiful experience. And even if it could be just a button on the wall, but then they're using the screen there to make it a little bit more richer and rewarding experience. So I think that's interesting. And then it learns from the usage, and it talks about that it learns from the usage. But I don't know if that's privacy yet, so I'm not sure exactly. It's kind of, I like it, but it's kind of weird. And then the technology, yeah, they got that right, I think. You can question me later on. You can come up here and change. I wanted to talk about the Nest because the next step is to talk about the connected appliances. And I made this slide so busy by purpose because it is so busy. The appliance industry is struggling with finding good use cases. They have no clue. There's no clue out there on the good user needs. What really makes a difference in people's lives. We see still a lot of large color displays, like this one, on fridges. And who wants the internet on the fridge? I don't. What Samsung?
I wouldn't mind.
You wouldn't mind?
No, I'd like my fridge to know that I actually use the cheese that I love husband and put it on my shopping list.
That's a different story. That's different. I wouldn't like it to be like a screen. We can argue on
It
this
doesn't
one.
have to be a screen.
No.
Yeah.
I like the use case. That's okay. it's a tough use case to
Yeah, I know.
Siemens is trying with a camera, but just to have a screen with the internet, I don't think so. But what Samsung and LG is doing is basically that they're using their electronics division muscle just to show that they can do it. So I'd say I'd give it a minus here. Did they make a UI, UX that was good in detail and careful about what to put where? No. There has been some concepts out there, I get to that, but nothing that's on the market is kind of good in that way. There's always a large screen, proprietary screens. Mealy and other smart grid guys, they are still proposing that you buy a very expensive small little screen and put it somewhere at home where you look at the energy consumption only there. When you can just as well have it in your computer or in your phone. I think this is kind of bad because it costs unnecessary money. Nobody would like to pay for that. So I think that's a double no. About privacy then, here's the LG Home chat. We will be going on a trip for 4 days. Have a nice trip. I'm going to miss you. Presentation mode. No, I don't think so. Nobody liked to put on Facebook what oven program they just used. It's not something I think that would take. So I'm going to be tough on the appliance industry here. But there is some hope. And one more thing that I didn't talk about is that the cost of being connected is often more expensive than the whole electronics is allowed to be costing in the fridge. So that's a very tough case to earn the money from. Yeah. But and that's part. Its cost is something that this group has not cared about at all. They've done a nice concept of connected appliances where they kind of take care of a lot of these problem areas. And I propose that you have a look at this one actually. I think it's a 5-minute movie or whatever, where they kind of have some use cases where you look at your phone and you can set some of the things on the washing machine from the phone, but you can also do everything from the washing machine. It has quite a lot of promise. And then at the end, which I like the best, is that you can go and buy some more conditioner, some more powder when you run out of it from the machine. So it has kind of that connection to it. And they have a lot of nice ideas there, I would say. But the cost is far too high when you still want to have something that extensive on the product. So not to be negative overall, there are some nice things that are on the market, usually very kind of with one function. Here's a slow cooker that's connected with an app. So basically, you can see how your slow cooker is cooking. And I think that just this kind of cooking is something you would like to have going when you're not in the house. You can be in the garden, you can go for a walk, and so you would dare to have that going and then monitor it from your app. I don't know what it costs actually. I don't think it's that expensive. I think it's just, and there's a lot of these types of examples everywhere, but they're usually kind of very small in their usage. Annoying. So what we did with all of this information at Electrolux was that we created an experience strategy, and I won't be able to show exactly the examples from it. What we did, Electrolux hasn't launched any Internet of Things products to date, just some similar to this kind of slow cooker, one product that's connected to the net, usually an air conditioner or something. But here, what we did was a concept project we created use cases. We looked through the data that we had from the previous example, all of that user data, and we looked at it with the criteria. Could we find anywhere where it's useful to be connected, to have a connection? And then we found some use cases where we created some use cases, user stories that we made, example screens out on iPads and phones, etc., for everybody to understand what it would mean. We didn't have enough money to actually build anything at this case. That was the next step before I left the company. And the purpose wasn't really to create products, but it was to figure out what the company strategy and technology roadmap would be. And then also, as a byproduct, it gave us some design principles that we could use going forward with real Internet of Things designs. And I think I already gave you the main design principle that we had, and that was that keep the product simple and have the rich data on the phone or a computer where you can actually handle that rich data. So the design principles here are to, design with real user needs, finding the untold story, the unmet needs, looking at the entire user journey and create ideas from that, use the information from the users. So when you get something out, you can kind of take the information in again and do something new. I don't think it will be a fridge with apps or the webs. So it can definitely be something else than that. A connected fridge, absolutely. But not with a big display, I don't think so. When it comes to the experience, to create the use case design flow across devices, sketch out scenarios and figure out how the user and the information travels between the different devices. It's a bit kind of thoughty here. Be careful where you put what information. Kill your darlings. In the project I showed before with this big color screen on the oven, our marketing wanted to have recipes on that oven. And we said, well, that's not, we can put them there, but nobody's going to use them. They're going to use the recipes they have on their iPad. And then they're going to use the oven to start the oven with. What you can do is to link the recipe from the iPad to start the oven, to set the right settings, but you don't want to have the full recipe on the oven. So that kind of thinking is to think about where you put the information. The setup process is quite often forgotten, and that's something I work with a lot in Telia Sonera, of course. Then we get to the privacy, and as we said, this is a huge subject. And I think the main point is giving up privacy must be worth it, but that's a moving target. We don't know 2014 what it would be like in 2016, how people would think about it being worth it. You can use the customer data, you can use it wisely, but be very kind of sensitive to the damage you can do. And you need to understand where the world is going here. I have a 13-year-old at home. She doesn't have the same view as I have when it comes to what the social network and kind of privacy is. It's really something we need to think about. Legislation, not to forget. The US government just decided that all cars would be connected. Oof. So to make a long story short, but that's something that needs to be thought about. Government is putting their hands onto this as well. And then I think the most important thing here is to look for the new revenue streams. Who should pay? I don't think it's probably it's not the same revenue streams we have today when you go and buy something. Probably the connected machine saves money for the company because they have less service calls, so maybe the company should put that extra money in, etc. So we can think about totally new ways of putting money in. This guy, he's not the only guy out there who has this product. It's a little thing you put next to onto your car that has Wi-Fi and that has all of the car information that you can send to the net. And so he's really using the existing protocol. This is something that's in all cars the last 15 years or 10 years. All cars have that interface. You just plug it in and you get all the data. And we don't know what to do. Nobody knows what to do about it. Probably has some ideas, but it could be the insurance companies maybe who wants to kind of sell that, kind of make sure that they get new customers who drive nicer. Maybe you get a lower premium if you show to the insurance company how you drive. I mean, there's lots of different things you can do there.
My point of view is that you need to define rules.
Oh.
Rules. Yes. Information, which information goes to whom, and who have access to it. Because some could have access to some types of information, but others should be private or should be owned by the owner of the car, and only he could access it or provide it.
I think it depends on industry to industry. In the telecom industry, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of kind of boards, and you decide what the privacy is about. Other industries doesn't have that at all. So, for example, the appliance industry, there are no rules. There's nobody sits there and talks about what information are you allowed to send from your fridge.
It's more what rules of behavior of information.
Yeah, but how to maintain them? Because there's always going to be these cowboys out there who do what they want to do. Yes. So, your future project, my future project. My last words here is that I think that I talked about Internet of Things here. And there's a lot of projects going forward, but I think and not so far ahead, people are going to stop talking about Internet of Things because it's a given that products, things can be connected. You need to design them with the same rules as normal. So I think this is kind of a phase we're going through now when we talk about it as a special entity, whereas soon to come, it's not special, we don't know. It's just design. So that's me.
Are you in any way involved in projects related to this? No? In your
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Secret! I mean, they're always secret. I don't know why. I don't understand why they're so secret, because I think it's the benefit from being very open, but I think everybody's a bit afraid that somebody else will be before them.
Trust issues.
Trust issues. All telecom companies has a large... In telecom it's called M2M instead of Internet of Things, I've learned. Machine to machine. And I don't understand why, because machine to machine, there's people as well. So maybe that's troublesome. But yeah, so I'm trying to work with these principles as well for these projects we have.
Can't shake off this feeling that this industry is, I do with consumer electronics at that time,
Yes.
it's just not moving fast enough.
No.
Because what you said that the cost of connecting seems to be prohibiting.
Yes.
Well, not anymore. I mean, if you look at what's going at Kickstarter, where actually these things pop up, they are connected just because it's basically cheaper to have an interface, you know, on a phone or something else, because the processor that is more capable, more capable than it would be required to run any of this, including, you know, full network connectivity, internet. I can get it in retail for less than $10. So. But
I don't have $10 for a whole electronics in the fridge.
No? How much does it cost?
Between $7 and $9.
Yeah.
Whole electronics, everything.
Everything?
Yeah. But if I get it in retail for 10, and if you order 10,000, it's probably free.
That's where the appliance industry is again slow. They're so small when you compare to all other industries that they never get the bulk money coming in. They're really bad at that.
Oh.
At that. So, and I think that's a dinosaur thing. It needs to stop in some way. And that's the appliance white goods industry. There's not so many reasons why it's still in Europe. It's because of the shipping costs. Now most of it is, a lot of things are starting to be produced in Turkey and Egypt. Still close enough, but cheaper. But there's a lot of things in China or in Korea where it is cheaper, it is connected, you have all the costs, everything you talk about, that when you have this benefits of scale, you have that in China, but still the dinosaurs in Europe and the US, they're not there. So that's an interesting thing, which for a company like Electrolux is interesting because everything that's the small appliances are sourced from China, because that's cheaper to ship. But the large things like a washing machine or a fridge, it's not worth the money to ship.
Where are they made? Fridges, for instance.
Fridges, Electrolux has factories in Hungary a lot. I think they just closed down everything in Sweden, and Sweden was the last Swedish factory, and Italy. So fridges is a bad example. Washing machines, Poland, Ukraine, Egypt, Italy.
Those are heavy.
I mean, Ukraine because of the Russian market, Poland because it's a good place to manufacture.
No, but they are heavy. Right? These are very heavy.
Yeah. No, but I think if it wasn't so unstable in North Africa, I think Egypt would be, it's on its way to be the big place where everything is manufactured. It's just like Mexico. Mexico and Egypt it's quite an interesting thing. Whereas the Western European countries, it's not worth the money. But I tell you, I promise you, your IKEA hob is manufactured in southern Germany. So it's some things can still be manufactured in Europe. Like this. Yeah,
It's not in Germany.
absolutely. It's a place where they develop. There's also a lot of these companies develop and manufacture at the same places as well, which is good for some things and not so good for other things. So. Any thoughts?
Any questions?
Yes.
Sir?
Sugar and coffee.
Yeah, as well. But long day.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.
And see you, most of you tomorrow. I hope.